So congrats to you both on this film getting this 4K remaster and returning to theaters. That has to be so exciting. And Michael, I was curious, what kind of involvement does a director have when something like this occurs? Like, are you approving the remaster or any like grading changes, or how does that work?
Well, yeah, just say G Kids have a lot of experience working with a whole range of animation studios from Studio Ghibli on down. So they've been through this a lot. And I really relied on G Kids technical team to kind of guide me through the process, which, from me, there was a certain amount of digging around for old files. It's been a long time. So, fortunately, all that stuff was quite well preserved. Our main sources were the original Blu-ray masters, which were already, pristine from the original digital files, and then the original files themselves. So we had the best, source material we could get. It was just a matter of, bringing that up to spec with the 4K, HDR, et cetera. But also, on my end, looking at it with fresh eyes, doing a bit of kind of quality control. When you look at something in isolation, sit in a dark room for a few days, you really start to see between the pixels. So, I wanted to get it right. I felt like this is kind of our, archival version of Tekkon. Like, I don't expect to be doing this again to this film. So I really wanted to get it right. And I also felt like, the initial release back in 2006, 2007, I felt like not only did it not, get seen by a very large audience, certainly not outside of Japan, but it also wasn't seen under the best conditions. We were showing on 35 millimeter, CinemaScope squeeze and everything. So I really felt like I, kind of wanted to get back to seeing it the way I saw it in the studio, in a pristine environment. So that was just my guiding principle, and thanks to G Kids for not just for helping me get there, but also for going to all the folks you know who own the movie, basically, getting it through all of that. They've really been amazing partners in this, and I'm just so glad to have the chance. I mean, how often is that 20 years after the fact, you know, um, a whole new generation gets to see this movie, and a lot of people who saw it maybe, at home, um, get to see it properly now on the big screen. So that's really
Yeah.
just so exciting for me.
Yeah, it's really special. I was seeing the new Gundam movie today actually, and the trailer for Tekken played before that, and just seeing
Oh,
that on the big
really?
screen was so exciting and got me pumped
Oof,
up.
that's so cool.
So that was a really cool moment today for me. And
Awesome. Awesome.
Anthony, I was curious, how did you originally come across this manga, and what made you want to write a screenplay for it? We don't see many American writers, like faithfully and good naturedly writing a lot of manga adaptations for the screen. So what kind of led you to that?
Yeah, I guess not. It was really Mike who introduced me to the material and brought me into the project. So it was perhaps his crazy idea, but it was definitely we had worked together before on the Animatrix, and I certainly was interested in this type of material, kind of a comic book geek as I was growing up, and then certainly found Japanese, not only anime but live action, and digging into the culture. So it was part of my DNA to some extent, but it was really more about what you would expect as for a writer when approaching an adaptation. Did I relate to the material, and did I think I could be additive? And that it was really that was the whole thing, was that I was so blown away by Taiyo Matsumoto's work, and the core themes, and feeling like, yeah, I wanted to take a stab at something that was potentially pretty challenging in its weight, or breadth, let's say. Um, it's funny because someone already asked Mike about being a Westerner, making an animation in Japan. It's I don't know about Mike, but I think he might agree that it's honestly not something we walk around thinking about. What we think about is just getting to work on extraordinary material, with incredible collaborators. And so, yeah, that distinction of being one of the few Westerners, or, the first or whatever, is really doesn't matter as much as being able to work on something that Taiyo Matsumoto, made. And so you don't really get precious about that stuff. Just try to be worthy of the work.
Yeah, the great art is what's going to be the lasting legacy of this. Regardless of any firsts or anything, it all comes down to the art resonating with people. And
Yep.
Michael, I watched the film again this morning, and one thing that really
Oh,
stood out was just how much the city feels like a character. Can you speak just to your mindset of making the city really distinct? It obviously has these wonderful cityscapes, but every part of the film, it has a vibrancy, it has a character to it. It's really a big part of it.
oh, thanks for saying that. That means a lot. Yeah, I think for me, um,
Whoa.
uh, uh, well, one of the concepts that Anthony and I had was that we wanted this to be not just a story of these kids fighting with the yakuza and the alien real estate developers, blah blah blah. We wanted it to be the story of, like, not just the kids coming of age, but also the coming of age of this city. This city transforming, evolving, and that's kind of the first challenge I made to my art director, Shinji Kimura. Was I told him that I want the city, hence the backgrounds. I want the city to be the star of the movie, and so that it was. He really took that to heart, and I think he was thinking while he was painting the backgrounds, like, I'm just gonna crush these characters. So, you know, kind of there was some sort of struggle between the animation staff and the background staff over who's going to get the biggest share of the spotlight. And I think it really works for the movie. Like, you're always conscious of where you are, what the spatial relationships are. When a character is going from, when black and white go from their home to the train tracks, exactly the path they've taken, and the everything, it's all intentional. So everything is designed to create a mood, but also to back up this story of this city that's kind of decaying, but then there's this like basically some kind of virus or cancer that's growing in the center of the city, and these kind of forces of evil that are trying to turn the city into their own, viral colony. It, it's well, it's really important to the movie, and so in terms of directing, a lot of the time I was just feeding the art department with, look, there's this weird fire hydrant that I found on the streets of Hong Kong. Let's just put those everywhere. Or there's this, signage from Sri Lanka. Or, I was trying to make it feel like something organic, but also something interesting so that, you could go around any street corner and whatever you saw was, uh, um, like looking at kids' toys spilled out over the floor. Like, any time you look at it, your eye's going to be drawn to a different, you know, Lego or plushie or whatever it is. So yeah, I hope that comes across. It definitely comes across better in 4K on a big screen, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely very rewatchable. Like just because of that, you're always going to be drawn to different things, and you'll notice new things. So it's going to be really cool to watch it in 4K and on the big screen. And Anthony, you spoke with such reverence of the source material. Could you speak to just your general mindset of when you're doing an adaptation, like figuring out where to expand? And obviously, you want to stay faithful to the core text, but you're going to have to generally make changes and be add to it. So how is your kind of mindset when approaching Tekon?
Yeah, so I mean, not dissimilar from most adaptations, you're trying to really distill, what is the core sort of thematics, or what's the for lack of a better word, a sort of premise takeaway that you want to achieve, and then how does the story, what is the sort of perfect structural attempt to get that point across? And so there was nothing but a wealth of material within these three volumes that Tayo wrote. So a lot of it had to do with figuring out how to distill the essential thematics within that story of the two brother or the two um, main characters. And beyond that, of course, and it's not hard to notice the other pairs of characters that surround them and hopefully are part of the scaffolding of their story. So every story kind of in a way, and this is done very well by Tayo, is a kind of structural element in that main thread. So it's really sort of being able to pull out the elements that because Mike was a big part of the adaptation, loved, the most, and then what we felt like wasn't necessarily baggage, but was stuff that we could dispense of, and then at some point you say, okay, these are all wonderful things, and that manga is the most beautiful thing you've ever read, but you have to kind of put it to the side and create a movie out of it. So that's when some of the real fun begins. But mostly, it's around just trying to be true to the feelings and the emotion of the piece, because that's always what I respond to if I'm adapting something.
That makes total sense. And Michael, my last question for you: this film won the Japan Academy Prize for Animation of the Year, and it had a very genuine embrace pretty immediately from Japanese audiences. But in America, it kind of had a more organic, like word of mouth buzz. Is something that the real anime fans would recommend, and it kind of had this cult following over time. How has it been just seeing the community really embrace it overseas, and see that this film hasn't gone away any, and that it was still just constantly building this fan base over time?
It's great to hear you say that. I actually only recently became aware of, you know, Tekkon, for better or worse, being some kind of a cult film, just in terms of, outside of Japan, how it's seen. I kind of found out about it because I'm working with an art director now he's maybe 10 years younger than me, and um, you know every now and then I'll kind of go back to something I did on Tekkon, or he I met him kind of through uh, mutual acquaintances, but also through his love for Tekon was kind of the starting point. But you know, it was always my understanding that, like, outside of Japan, it's pretty much unknown. It only was shown in, I don't know, two theaters for a weekend in 2007, a couple film festivals, and but that it had kind of faded. And I was, well, I feel like, even though the world has moved on, like, we did a lot of stuff. When I say we, I mean me and all the other artists involved in making it. I think we did some stuff that's a little ahead of its time, and actually really holds up well. And it's been, I think, imitated a lot by folks here in Japan. But I said something to that effect to the art director, and he said, "What are you talking about? Like, every kid who went to art school, you know, after TechCon came out, this is like a touchstone for them. Like, if you went to art school in North America or Europe, that TechCon is like a Bible for a lot of us." And I started looking around, as you do, and realized that there's a generation of animation students of animation who, however they found it, whether it's in someone's dorm room, or a BitTorrent, or an old DVD, or a screening in their college film series or whatever, it's really spoken to at least some people, particularly in the creative community. So that's really feels nice to be to hear. It's some kind of um, 20 years after the fact, really. We should be thankful just for being able to make movies like this. That's a huge gift. But to actually have something like this that lasts so long, after the fact, I don't even really consider it my movie anymore, because it's got legs and it's walking down the street. And now there's all these other people who are, who it means something to. So that's a real joy.